lots to get to, so let's get to it. First, we're starting with the Middle East. We've got to talk about Israel and Hamas because it's a very, very big story, and there's a lot of things that could tick off if this goes badly, worse than it's going, let's just say. So Trey says the Israeli military says fighter jets struck more than 450 targets in Gaza over the past day. Video released by the Israeli Defense Force. So there's that. And I mean, it's buildings being destroyed. These days, I mean, journalists showed footage of video games and said this was real footage. And people didn't catch up until sleuths on the internet said, hold on, I can recreate that on my game. Looks exactly the same, right? And so to me, everything should be taken with a grain of salt because, yeah, who knows, right? But at the same time, plausible. Everybody says that this is what's happening, so this is what's happening. Douglas McGregor says we must protect Israel from itself. Douglas McGregor, just to give context, he's been interviewed by Tucker Carlson a bunch of times. He's a U.S. Army colonel, retired combat veteran, and he's been a consultant military TV analyst, so you know he's a pro. And he says, we have to protect Israel from itself. Mr. Netanyahu is on the path to Armageddon. You have an understandable and justified interest from Israel to destroy Hamas. The problem is it takes a president who has the authority and strength to tell the Israeli government, no, you cannot go into Gaza and execute the plans you have. Lay it out. If you insist upon this, we will withdraw our naval forces. If you pull back, we will reconsider what our options are, and we will remain and continue to support you. Does Joe have the strength? And no, they don't. Here's Diane and Mossad commentary says, Israel, the first Israeli flag is raised in Gaza. So when you hang a flag, it's in conquest. And I have for you the point of all this, or one of them. Right, so he's hanging his flag there. Sorry, it was loud. Pretty wild stuff going on. Dr. Anastasia says, why did Israel create Hamas? And Chris Sky said, to create a boogeyman they needed for an excuse for genocide, or just genocide, you could argue one way or the other, right? So just to back it off a little bit, an excuse for the military engagement to wipe out that portion being occupied by Hamas, I guess, or that group of people who keep rocketing them or whatever. It's the excuse to act militarily against them. That's what I think it is. And I mean, I don't know that qualifies as genocide, but I guess an argument could be made. Back to this. And to prevent the formation of a Palestinian state, Benjamin Netanyahu is on video saying this in 2019. I've shown you the video. That's true. He's not lying there. That's true. Israel funded Hamas in order, and long game, short game, there were other reasons Hamas was created in the first place, to counter Arafat at the time, right? But they still fund them. Israel funded Hamas until the mid-2010s, and they still encourage foreign countries to fund Hamas. And how is the leader of Hamas, or one of the leaders, not the only leader, obviously, but one of the leaders of Hamas, living in a luxury compound in Qatar with no sanctions, no criminal, nobody's really worried about them or anything like that. If you were waging an international terrorism campaign or an international war against Israel, don't you think that somebody somewhere would be upset about that? No? In Qatar, nobody'd be upset about that? Okay. Why not? Right? So isn't that weird? Right? Even if you agree, like, even if there's some kind of disagreement between Arabs and Jews and so on and so forth, it's the war part. It's the terrorist part. It's the funding of rockets into civilian areas that you'd think that somewhere there'd be a line that's like, oh, hold on. Well, hold on. We didn't know about that, right? Like, but it doesn't seem like that. It doesn't seem like there's that line. And you have to wonder, right? And everybody's going after Hamas in Gaza, but leaving the fundraising structure in place. Like, it seems like it's like ISIS was allowed to operate openly and on Twitter without any kind of problems at all. But if you said something like Trump won the 2020 election and it was stolen from him, then you couldn't talk about anything on Twitter, right? Like, seems weird, right? Seems very, very strange. Kanoka the Great, moving on, says Joe Rogan and comic Dave Smith highlight the startling claims made by General Wellesley Clark, who asserted that the U.S. government had formulated plans to attack 7 Middle Eastern countries, ultimately culminating with Iran, days after the tragic events of September 11th, 2001. The conversation delves into the propaganda used to justify these wars. The staggering profits amassed by the weapon manufacturers amounts to trillions of dollars, T with a T, and the tragic toll of millions of innocent lives lost. They decided they want to fight these wars, then they make up an excuse that they tell the American people, then these weapons companies rake in hundreds of billions of dollars in profits, and babies get slaughtered. Every time with the babies. That's what really happens. Innocent men, women, and children die. Oh, one thing, Jason, thank you for sending me the Rebel News headline. Jason sent me a Rebel News headline, and I don't have it, but because I wanted to talk about it, but I just didn't bring it up. Apologies. That said, Israel supplied photographic proof that the atrocities committed, beheading babies, actually did happen. And is that enough for me to believe that that happened? I don't think so. I don't think so. It would be akin to a situation where the United States has a vested interest in going into a territory, let's say Vietnam, just for choose one, and then the United States has evidence that the Vietnamese did this atrocity, and here's the evidence. Definitely true, 100%. Not AI. Don't do the reverse AI checker on it, but it's not AI. Don't worry about it. Do I believe that? Nah. You know what I'm saying? It's not. No, I don't believe it. I just don't believe it. I would need third-party verification. I'd need a location. I'd need names. I'd need people. Not funeral dates. But this is not a small thing. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not going to take anybody's word for it. Least of all Israel's. Least of all the chain of events that would need to coalesce to have Israel confirm that. I would need a third party. I would need somebody independent to go in and confirm this. And I understand that's a high bar, but I'm not just taking the word of Israel for this because they have a vested interest. They are influenced by their goals, right? And so I can't take them at their word. I can't take this is totally independent. They definitely behead those babies. No, I don't believe it. And if I saw evidence that, yes, it was true from a third party or something to that effect, I don't know at this point what I would need evidence-wise to believe it. Because at this point, the amount of things they're willing to lie about in order to gain your approval to continue the funding of these wars, they'll lie about anything. They'll say anything. They'll do anything. They will lie to you. It was babies and dogs. They took puppies. Right? And they'll say it all indignantly like that. Like, if you don't care about the puppies, you're inhumane. And all of a sudden I'm inhumane. You haven't proven anything. It's an allegation. Like, I'm just, it seems manipulative is what it seems like, right? And atrocities happen. And I'm not wishing for children to die or anything like that. And I'm not wishing to diminish the deaths of people. I know that, the terrible things happen. I saw the trucks or whatever on the day the whole thing happened. But again, I have questions about that. I have questions about the whole thing. How did that happen in the first place? Nobody's answered that. It's like the Las Vegas shooting, right? Questions abound. And it's not, I wouldn't just take a state's word for it. I wouldn't take George W. Bush's word for it either, right? Okay, back to this. Today, the Secretary of State Blinken, he's the de facto president, it seems. Secretary of State Blinken, he's the guy who's kind of running the show behind, well, Barack Obama is, but while they're moving around, if Joe Biden's in motion, Blinken's a couple of steps from him, and he's like, we've got to stop this terrible press conference. Anyway, he warned Iran that the U.S. will respond decisively to any attack targeting the U.S. personnel, because Biden couldn't do that, right? And Obama couldn't do that, because Biden couldn't do that. Anyway, this statement follows his warning issued 2 days ago that the U.S. expects increased hostilities from Iran directed at U.S. forces. The question remains, will the Biden administration and the U.S. government finally get its war against Iran? So this is 2 minutes of history on what the U.S. wanted to do in 2001, and that was drawn up, and it just kind of got derailed because, things happen and people got rich and lazy. Here we go.
This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years. starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
It's not like that plan was followed perfectly to a T, but a lot of it sure was. It's like insane that this was just said. And that's not just like if we didn't have such a corrupt press, how do they not talk about that every day?
Every day.
Like, why does that never come up? Oh, it's like, as we fought all of these wars, no one went, but this is exactly what I heard Mr. Four-Star General tell me was your plan. And you've never come to the American people and said, this is my plan. You're just like, so, and what's really interesting about it, right, is it just reveals this the way propaganda works. Because if you think about it, we start fighting the war in Afghanistan. We're in the war in Afghanistan by late 2001. It's not till 2003 we're in Iraq, right? And then it's not till 2010 that we're in Libya. 2012 we're in Syria, you know, and then in Yemen, then in all the, and it's like each time they had their own little propaganda story for why we had to go into this war now. And you're like, no, motherfucker, this was always planned. You decided in 2001 you were doing this. So don't tell me this is because Gaddafi's about to go genocidal, or because Saddam has weapons of mass destruction, or because Bashar al-Assad is killing his own people. It's like, no. This is just your latest little excuse now for the war that you already wanted to do. And that's how this shit really works, man. It's like they decide they want to fight these wars. Then they make up a bullshit excuse that they tell the American people. Then these weapon companies rake in hundreds of billions of dollars in profits, and babies get slaughtered. Like, that's what really happens. Like, innocent men, women, and children die, get exploded to death, starve to death, get displaced. Like, it's just the most evil shit in the world.
And we want to think of ourselves as a good guy.
Right. And I think that it's interesting, the trope that we continually get caught up in is like the babies. But it's like abortion, right? I mean, how many are we talking here? And it's not just babies in a war. It's not just you get blown up or shot or whatever. You're displaced. Your home has no value. You can't put it up on the market or anything like that. Would you like to purchase my war-torn condo? It doesn't work, right? And so your ability to generate wealth, your ability to reliably get food and to run your life independently without somebody helping you is terribly hamstrung. The damage done by war is massive. And it seems like we are being encouraged to go after that bloodlust, and we're dehumanizing the people who we're using our tax dollars to do that to. And that's, I don't want to participate in that, right? And I'm not saying that, you know, the peaceniks in the 1960s were painted as, you know, cowards and all sorts of things like that. It's not about that. It's about using our tax dollars in a way that is, we're supposed to be a leader. The West, Canada, we're supposed to be leaders in democracy and freedom and so on and so forth. And we're using our tax dollars to fund this military action in Israel towards Palestine, bombs, rockets from Hamas to Israel, Ukraine. We're using tax dollars to fund all of this. Why? Because we have to, for peace and security. War is peace. War is peace. That's where we're at. Pretty incredible, really. And we don't question it, just like we don't question our 2% inflation target, right? 2% inflation. Michael Tracy says the term humanitarian pause is next level innovation, preposterous war euphemism. It was invented so politicians don't have to call for a ceasefire, but can still pretend to have deep humanitarian concerns while a World War II style bombardment takes place. The Canadian government is using the term humanitarian pause as well. And we should probably call them out on it, because it's not a humanitarian pause whatsoever. And they're in the midst of their ground invasion right now. I showed you the flag. So pretty crazy stuff going on. And the perception that they want to project is important. And if you call them out on their lies, like a humanitarian pause isn't a ceasefire, why do you support this war? Why do you support our tax dollars going to fund this war? Why do you support our tax dollars funding both sides of this war? So on and so forth. Instead, they want to talk about, you know, a humanitarian pause, but it's nonsense. It's political rhetoric meant to confound people who don't think the whole thing through and who won't engage with it, because It's too complicated because they don't want to make the politician feel bad, right? Because getting into an argument feels bad with people. People don't like it. Okay, Tulsi Gabbard, we got to talk about Hamas, and this is the same thing. Tulsi Gabbard is a presidential candidate, okay, 2020 presidential candidate. I don't think she's running right now. And she says Turkey's support for Hamas is not surprising, considering that they also supported ISIS by helping them recruit and transport jihadists' weapons into Syria and the region. Erdogan, like Hamas, is part of the Muslim Brotherhood. Indeed, his ambition is to become the supreme caliph or the leader of the new Islamist Ottoman Empire. This is the first I've heard of all of this. I mean, not necessarily all of it together. It's the first I've heard of it. Is Erdogan supporting movements into Syria? He's NATO. We're NATO. Shouldn't NATO countries all be on the same page? It's very, very strange to me that Tulsi Gabbard is accusing Turkey of supporting ISIS, so on and so forth, when at the same time we're all supposed to be a big, happy NATO family, all supporting Ukraine against evil Russia, right? I just don't. I don't think that this kind of division. I don't think that our old military alliances will survive this kind of rapid division and evolution. The Gay Republican says, what happens if Turkey attacks Israel and the U.S. defends Israel, considering we're both NATO members? And this is XOOAA, says, if Erdogan and Turkey's military mobilize to invade Israel, you'll understand the purpose of the USS General Ford's carrier group in the Mediterranean. Americas will always have Israel's back. How does that work, right? How does that work at all? It seems like that's not going to work very well. Here's Andy No, and he's highlighting a Palestinian protest in London. He says, breaking chants of Allah Akbar. Allah is greater. Breakout near the Winston Churchill statue and Big Ben at the London Palestine protest. The large crowd, which features some speaking UK Labour officials, is demanding Israel cease its war with Hamas. Okay, so I mean, you can have a cease, Hamas can. At some point, somebody's going to lose this war, and then you need to figure out how to deal with both the people who are left over and the land and Israel and all the rest of it. And better to do it than not, better to do it than kick it down the road. And I think reestablishing what was is probably a mistake, but regardless, here is more of this kind of stuff, Palestinian protests, this time in Canada. Bruce is highlighting this. Freedom for Palestinians, that's okay, you can protest that. Freedom for Canadians, no, you can't protest that. Protest for Hamas, yep, you could do that. Protest against big pharma lies and government corruption, can't do that. Freedom for Ukraine, you can do that. Freedom for Canadians, you can't do that. These Gaza Hamas protesters have been going on now for almost 3 weeks. The treatment of these protesters is considerably different from the Freedom Convoy. Before the Freedom Convoy even got to Ottawa, they had been ruthlessly attacked in the press. Police snipers from across Canada were even sent to rooftops in Ottawa. The Canadian government was terrified because of the outpouring of support for the Freedom Convoy as it made its way to Canada. Ottawa, let's say. The Canadian government is not terrified of people glorifying terrorism and screaming for genocide in Israel. They want those voices and support more than anything else. We live in a two-tiered system where the left can do as they please, even assaulting people, hate speech, blocking streets, and get away with it. But if you donate $50 to a peaceful political movement and protest, they want to be able to ruin your life and seize your assets. I don't know why people are putting up with double standards. Canada is failing fast, folks, and either we all demand an end to this government or we will be Venezuela 2.0. I don't think he's far off. Here's Patriot Smoothie, and he says, a chorus of honking and cheers can be heard as a large pro-Palestinian protest makes its way through the streets of Ottawa, seemingly towards Parliament Hill. This is after the Freedom Convoy. People are in jail. And I mean, Tamara Lich and Chris Barber are on trial for organizing something similar to this. Pretty incredible. Here you go. I realize it's a lot of honking. I mean, jeepers creepers, Zexi Lee must be losing her mind, right? Pam says, I'm totally being facetious. She's probably honking. She's probably sitting down there honking with one of the horns herself. Pam says, I don't find it funny at all. This is a meme that says, isn't it funny how it's okay for Canada to give money to Hamas terrorists in Palestine, but if you give $5 to peacefully protesting Canadian truckers, the Liberal government seizes your bank account? Yeah, isn't that interesting? It's very interesting indeed. Here is more video from, I think this is Ottawa again. Tokyo Rosie says, good thing they're waving Palestinian flags. All that honking would surely get someone's bank account seized if they were waving Canadian flags. What a messed up city Ottawa is. Yeah, that's pretty wild stuff going on. Canada Proud says, protesting Trudeau will get your bank account frozen and your assets seized, but pro-Hamas protesters are apparently okay. Yep. So it's the same thing. It's more honking, lots of noise. Western University is getting ready for a pro-Palestine rally, but they don't name names. Western says an external group has planned a peaceful demonstration on Western's campus on Sunday, October 29th, that's today, from 12 till 2. The event may draw a large crowd. If you need to come to campus, expect some delays and give yourself extra time to get to your destination. And people are not happy necessarily about what's going on here. It says what you can expect. Midterm exams will continue as planned. I don't know that there are any midterm exams. Walton says it's study week. What midterms would be scheduled for the Sunday of study week? So I don't know if they're right or not. Building and services that are open on Sunday will remain open beginning at 11:30 a.m. Lambton Drive will be closed from Western Road to Huron Drive, and Middlesex Drive will be closed and reopen at 2:30 p.m. It seems strange to close the roads for the protest. When I was younger, it seemed that police would come out and get upset at you if you stepped onto the roadway saying you can't disrupt traffic. You're protesting, but you don't have carte blanche to shut things down. So that seems strange, right? Some parking lots may fill up. It's a weird thing for the universities to be so open and facilitating of these kind of events, whereas protests for Canadians or even having speakers that are controversial for Canadians is problematic at universities, right? It's very, very interesting, very strange. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful